So the twin tail craze feels like it's at an all-time high right now. We've got skaters like number 1 Ishod, Jamie Foy, P-Rod, Mark Sushu, Dylan Jabe, just to name a few. They've all switched to symmetrical boards. But this is Yuto Horigome's April skateboard, and unlike the pros that I mentioned before, Yuto is still skating a standard shape. And in this video, I want to figure out why and what benefits Yuto is getting out of this specific mold that he refuses to skate a symmetrical board like so many other top pros are doing. So before we get into the skating, I just want to mention how pretty this board is. The graphic looks absolutely stunning. I'm not gonna lie, I struggled a little bit to actually want to skate it because I didn't want to ruin the graphic. It looks like a piece of artwork. So shout out to whoever does this graphic at April. But now as we're looking at the shape of the skateboard, the first thing you'll notice is the board has a good amount of concave. Not too much so that you feel like it's like cupping your feet too much, but it definitely doesn't feel flat. It's kind of right there in the middle, which I definitely like. Also, Yuto's skating a lot of super gnarly rails and gaps, so that concave in the board is going to help make his board stronger and last longer. Now, I'm definitely no Ben DeGro. I don't have like a way to measure the angle of the tail versus the nose, but on this board, it does appear that the nose is just slightly steeper than the tail, and it appears to be definitely bigger. But when you check the dimensions on this board, the tail is 6.81 inches and the nose is 6.88 inches, so they're a pretty similar size as far as the length goes. But when you look at the shape of the nose, it's really full and round, whereas the tail is a lot more narrower, which is something that I actually noticed in my first session skating it. With that big full nose, it really gives you confidence looking down that you're going to be able to control your board. I haven't had a big nose like that in a really long time. In this session, I decided just to skate out of the bank because for me, skating up a Euro is easier because there's less impact. So I just went through some of my basic tricks. One thing that I did notice is that the board was really grippy. Part of that is obviously, you know, new grip is always going to be grippy. But on top of that, I was wearing new shoes. And then the third layer to it all, obviously, is having a more full nose. You're going to get a lot more grip. So when I was doing my kick flips, I had problems with the board over gripping and then adjusting by flicking more out to the side and then it not gripping enough. So it was difficult for me to kind of recalibrate where and how I needed to flick my kick flips. And on this day, I don't feel like I really got a kick flip that I was satisfied with. Partially, the wind was absolutely out of control and was blowing my board away from me. But when I did switch over to heel flips, I was able to get a really good grip with my heel, and the heel flip felt really nice. One thing about having a bigger, more full nose is I feel like the sweet spot for your flip tricks is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more forgiving and you can feel it a little bit better. However, for me, skating a symmetrical board and flicking off of a tail for so long, it definitely was still a struggle to try and get used to it. And you can see that with these backside flips. I kept missing the flick because I was afraid I was going to over grip. So I was definitely kind of getting in my head switching to this board shape, but I mean, that's not the board's fault. It's obviously on me. Then when I went to try tray flips, I noticed that the tray flips felt a little bit different because with a symmetrical board, the center of gravity is right exactly in the center of the board. Whereas when you have a heavier nose, the center of gravity is moved forward just a little bit more. So the axis of rotation with a symmetrical board is different than it would be with a board like Yuto's. However, I do feel like this benefited my tray flips a little bit because with the axis of rotation a little bit moved forward, I felt like with more weight in the front, it was easier for me to get my nose up into the air before scooping. But it did take me some time to adjust to it before I got a tray flip that I was happy with. But also my tray flips just aren't good. So there's also that. Recently, I've really been slacking off on my ledge skating, and I feel like there's no better way to get used to a board than just doing some grinds on a curb. And I really want to get my almost like awareness or feeling for skating ledges back and just get comfy starting with something small. Now again, I don't know if this is something mental or if it's real, but regardless, that big nose when I'm skating on this curb, I noticed that having that big nose giving you that confidence that you can really control the board. I feel like gave me an edge to make me feel like I was gonna put the board exactly where I needed to put it every single time. As well, the nose being slightly steeper than on a twin tail, you know, you get that extra grip, that extra control, and I do feel like I could feel a difference. Also, having the bigger nose for nose slides is definitely nice. You can feel like there's more nose for you to stand up on, which definitely makes sense for Yuto because he does a lot of nose slide tricks. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. I think that is kind of hinting at one of the reasons why Yuto won't switch to a symmetrical board. But the second session with the board, I was really starting to feel out the shape. I was still definitely conscious of it. Like my brain was still aware of it being different and it being not symmetrical. And I didn't really notice this the first session, but the second session, I was kind of getting tired of flipping my board back around all the time. It's definitely something I like about symmetrical boards. But since the board was starting to click a little bit, I decided to try some tricks over the hip that I don't normally do. The first one being frontside flip. I struggle so hard with this trick because turning frontside, I throw my shoulders and forget to like twist my hips. So I landed a bunch of like really sketchy frontside flips. I don't even know if you'd count them, but then after that, I decided to try front heel. Again, I suck at turning frontside. I got a few sketchy ones, but I guess my point is that by the second session, the board was starting to feel comfortable enough that I started kind of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone a little bit, which I was super pleased with, and the board definitely was not hurting me. Now by the third session, you can really tell how comfortable I was with the board. At this point, I was barely aware that I wasn't skating a twin tail at all. The board just started to feel a lot more natural, and you can tell that I started skating a lot faster and with a lot more confidence because I started to feel more in tune with the board itself. Yuto Horigome does a lot of nollie tricks, so in this session, I tried to make a conscious effort to do more nollie tricks, even though my nollies are complete trash. But I really wanted to test how it felt popping off of the nose with Yuto's board. Then I decided I wanted to try and learn a new trick, which was a back 5-0 shove it out. I could not for the life of me land it. I got close, landed like sketchy ones. I wouldn't count them, but again, I think having the quick pop of the tail and then having that big nose really started to feel nice, that I was again starting to push my limits and do tricks that I've never done before. But at this point, I feel like I understood exactly why Yuto skates this shape and doesn't skate a symmetrical board. And I think it just comes down to Yuto Horigome's trick selection. So if you think about Yuto Horigome, one of his go-to tricks in Street League is a nollie back 270 back nose. And one of his video parts, he also did a nollie back 180 to switch front Smith, which is absolutely incredible. It looked so cool. And then most recently in Tampa Pro, he did a nollie back 270 back blunt, which I've never seen anybody do that trick before. So the reason I think that this board favors those nollie tricks for Yuto actually comes down to something that Ishod Ware said on the 9 Club, which is the reason for why he switched to skating two tails in the first place. His reasoning was this: sometimes he'd be popping nollie into a handrail and he would miss his pop. And so in his head, he was thinking, nollie is my weaker pop and I keep missing it. So why do I want the pop to be harder in my weaker stance? So why don't I just make the nose into another tail so that I get a quick, consistent pop every time I'm trying to nollie into a rail? But then Ishod admits that skating two tails, you don't get as much leverage. Whereas with a nose, because it's steeper, it helps the board pop up higher and suck up into your feet better. So Ishod would rather have a lower, more consistent pop with his nollies. Whereas if you look at the tricks that Yuto does, he has a really strong nollie pop. He doesn't mind needing to pop more to get that strong nollie pop. And in fact, because he's so good at popping off of a standard nose, he can really suck the board up into his body to do those 270 rotations into back nose, switch front Smith, or back blunt. And those are tricks that I don't think we'd really ever see Ishod do, because not only is Yuto good at those tricks, but his board is set up to really help him do those kinds of maneuvers. So it's like Paul Schmidt says that skating a twin tail really limits you, because no matter what stance you're in, you're gonna get the same pop every time. Whereas if you skate with a nose and a tail, you have options. It's like a Swiss Army knife. And so with Yuto Horigome's specialized bag of tricks, I just don't think it makes any sense for him to switch to a twin tail. Maybe I could see him switching to a twin nose, but that's basically my reasoning for why I don't think Yuto's gonna ever skate a twin tail. So I hope you like me theorizing about Yuto's board shape. Now that I've said this, he's probably gonna announce that he's skating a symmetrical board now, but regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to make every single day a Friday, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.